Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to talk about of ACT as well as how it relates to these learners. Oh, ICT, sorry about that. Now, the lesson generally is about net force. We are talking about how that two forces acting on an object from opposite directions can affect the net force acting on the object as well as the acceleration of the object. So after this lesson, learners must be able to differentiate between all three Newton's laws of motions, and the learners must also be able to to apply their knowledge in order to be able to tell whether an object will accelerate higher or what have you. The issues of motions. They must be able to understand linear motion and all of that. Now, what happens is that there are two things that are at hand here, because this is physics. Number one is the theory side of it, more like the literature side of it. What learners need to know, as in definitions and the laws. Those are the theory side of it, the literature side of it. I hope I'm using the right word. And then there is also the mathematical side of it. These are the calculations now, you see, which has to do also with the formulas and the symbols as we know mathematics. Now, how this is going to help us to teach these learners better, become effective, and make the learning simple for learners is like this. You see, imagine one learner is having a question. A learner is having a question. They have to ask that question. The teacher has to make sure that the learner understands the definition. Of course, other learners are listening, but all learners have different learning styles. Another learner may not fully understand the exact example of that teacher, so they might feel like they fully understand it until an exam comes. Then that's when they realize that no, I didn't actually fully understand it, or I didn't understand it in this manner. Because remember, we are not only targeting the knowing of whatever that concept is, but we are also targeting the learner's understanding of it. So where ICT comes in is, number one, ICT helps us to be able to help all these learners with more time without actually giving more time to the learners individually by yourself. So it's like, as a teacher, you are giving the learners individual attention without actually giving individual attention. What I mean by that, for instance, let's talk about the literature side of physics, definitions and laws, and we want to tell whether learners truly understand it. With ICT, you can set a quiz. After you have set a quiz, different kind of questions. Sometimes the three kind of questions are the same, but they come with different examples. For instance, you can say, okay, this is an example of, it can be frictional force. You give another example that is different, but the answer is also frictional force. You can get a lot of questions. What is beautiful about this is that it gives instant feedback to the learners. The quiz. So when the learner says, okay, submit, it will give instant feedback to say, okay, no, actually you got 30% on definitions. Then the learner instantly knows where they lack and how they can go about learning better, but in short time. You see, the difference now is that in classroom, the learner would have to ask the teacher. Another learner doesn't have that opportunity. The learner would have to ask the teacher. The teacher can only address one learner per time. But with ICT, the learner can assess themselves at their own times, or even in a classroom, learners can instantly see where they went wrong without the teacher needing the time to mark the papers one by one. Learners have easy access to these quizzes, no need for a bunch of papers, and the next thing the learner gets lost. We can give the learners more questions so learners can actually assess themselves more. On the theory side, we can use quizzes. We can also use quizzes on the practical side of it, because then the learners will be doing variety of calculations there and there. When they get wrong, then they can actually retry until they get to the actual final answer. That way, it is easier for the learners to know how to know their own progress with learning, because one of the things about physics is that this is a subject that requires learner-centered type of teaching strategies. It is also easier to apply strategies like your inquiry-based learning when it comes to ICT. And another thing, we can put all different kind of learning mediums on ICT. You can put videos, you can put pictures, you can also put yourself there as a teacher explaining. You can put different kind of questions. Remember, learners have different kind of learning. So we put different styles of teaching within that thing. Then the learner can decide, okay, I work better with the video. Choose a video and that, So ICT, it is doing very well. And for a subject like this one, personally, I would love to use ICT. And I'm hoping that this will also encourage you to use ICT, because it is very effective. Thank you.